You're listening to the Mile You're In podcast. Everything running related, from 100 meters to 100 miles. And now, here's your host, Phil Patterson Jr.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Mile You're In podcast, episode 8, and we're talking about the Wildcat 100. Now, first off, this weekend, well, last weekend, I should say, was insane. This was my third time doing the race, third attempt doing the race, and at this point, I have the loops memorized. I know what spots I like, what spots I don't. I know where I like to run, where I like to walk. I know temperature-wise what to expect. I know at night how to keep myself up and a little more awake and upbeat and energetic and into it compared to the past. I've learned so many lessons from each 100 miler. Each race has presented different challenges, different opportunities to learn and grow. Going into this race knowing so much about the course and the race itself really benefited me in many ways, but just the unpredictability of the weather and life and your body and so many factors that come into play. It's just, no matter how much you think you know and how good you think you are, there's always going to be something that comes out of nowhere, something that's unexpected, something you just don't even plan for because you don't think of. It happens. It happens to the best of us, and in some cases you're able to push through and find a way to finish. In other ways you just can't, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever it may be. It can attack you to the point where you just say, I don't care, or I can't do this anymore. From my experience, I will never judge anybody who drops out of a race, specifically an ultramarathon, and most definitely a 100 miler. It's just, no matter how hard you train, how well you train, how prepared you are, how experienced you are, it doesn't matter, because come race day, anything can happen, and just your body can react differently than it ever has in the past. Things can affect you that didn't in the past. Sometimes you just don't feel it. I mean, in training, there's many times I get up and I'm just like, I don't want to do this. And sometimes I push through, and sometimes I'm like, screw it, I'm not doing it. Once you're there, you've traveled, you invested the money and everything into it, you gotta at least try. So if you're there and the race is about to start, you toe the line no matter what, because a lot of times how you feel in the beginning is not always how you're going to feel throughout the race. So going into that, as well, this is going to still suck. It's going to get better, but it's still going to suck. So just see what you can do, and that's what I admired about a lot of runners that I saw during this race, was just the desire to finish and give it everything that they had. Some were able to, and some couldn't, but that's life. Things happen, and you can only control so much. You can only, for safety reasons, you can only push so hard. These are just little battles that we fight. So in the end, if you lose some here or there, it's not the end of everything, because you still have another opportunity to get out there and redeem yourself and improve and finish what you attempted to accomplish. So and you know what, that's one thing that I really love about this race, is now being there for the third year in a row, seeing people that had tried this before and couldn't do it and were back out trying again. Some that had failed multiple times, or some that had maybe dropped down to a 50 miler or 100K distance. And now we're like, I'm here to actually finish the 100 miler this time. I'm not dropping down. Some say it was the hottest weekend on record for the Panhandle. Some say it was one of the hottest days. Some say it got as hot as a feel like of 110, where most people, it was around 105, 106. Regardless, it felt brutal. It was hot. No rain, very little breeze, and when there was a breeze, it was like a hot and humid breeze, so it wasn't even refreshing and inviting, really. It was almost more of a nuisance. At night, it definitely, in my opinion, got cooler and felt better, even cold at times. But during the day, it was just brutal. Very little to no clouds. And what's funny is I feel like when the clouds did come and they provided the shade, it was almost like the sun got pissed off that we were starting to enjoy ourselves, because it would quickly come back out, and it almost seemed like it came back out with a vengeance. Like it got hotter. Like, oh, okay. All right, I gave you a little break. Now I'm gonna turn up the heat, literally. But for someone like me who loves the heat and training in it, this was the toughest when it comes to the weather. It just was brutal, and to know that everybody else out there was saying the same thing and complaining about it just tells me that it wasn't me. It was hot. It was bad. The nice thing was the experience I have with running in the heat and this humidity really helped me, and the training that I put in and the plan that I had designed for myself, I feel like I really executed it well. I was able to pace myself the way I wanted to, knowing again where I wanted to run and where I didn't really helped. This time it was, the trail, where you pick your spots, what you like, stick to the plan, and it's gonna work. I went into this knowing that I had dealt with some breathing issues since my last 100 miler on my birthday, and I was starting to get it back. I started training with a breathing device, the Go-To device, which really helped me. I could notice a difference even with the first run that I used the device with. It just, breathing felt a little easier. I was able to run a little longer. When I did get tired, I was able to catch my breath a little faster. So that, I feel like that device definitely helped. And then also just being okay with slowing down and pacing myself, knowing that these distances, I can't push myself like I used to. I'm getting older, I got to admit it. I'm not, I know people that are older than me are going to get on me for saying that, but I got to admit it. I'm getting older. I feel the difference in my body, the aches and pains, the time it takes to recover. I feel it. So say what you want. I'm not where some of you are. I get it, but I'm no spring chicken, as many people would say either. The race started. The first lap was just getting reaccustomed to the course, making sure nothing has changed. But after the first loop, I was like, yeah, this, I've done this 80 times. The loops, not the race. I've done 80 loops on this course. I know what it's like. This 81st loop was exactly what I expected. So, let's dial it in, stick to the plan, and let's go. And I was doing well. I decided, just based off of feel and experience and something I learned in my last 100, was that I wanted to change my shoes and socks more often and take those little 5-minute breaks to sit down, relax my back, stretch out my calves a little bit. Things that I wasn't doing in the past. I felt like I always had to be on the go, but I started realizing those little breaks, even though they do add up over time, it's still better for me mentally and physically. So at 10 miles, I would sit down, take off the shoes. I would soak my feet in ice water just because, one, it was so hot and that was helping to bring down my body temperature, but also just to kind of numb the feet a little bit, get out some of the inflammation, the aches and pains. Then I would dry them off, put on new socks, put on new shoes, and just get out there and keep grinding. My mile splits were pretty consistent. My goal was just to keep them under 15 as much as possible, knowing that later on it was gonna get slower and slower. So just focusing on trying to keep it between 10 and 15 minute miles based off how I felt. Sometimes I felt that high and I felt good, and I was trying to be a little more careful to not enjoy it too much, just because I knew how this weather was going to continue to beat us up, and eventually it would catch up to us and I would feel it. So I rolled those highs, and the lows didn't feel as low as they have. Like, I feel like I could sense them. They were there, and I would even say to myself, okay, here's one of those lows. We're going to have to grind through this, but it wasn't as bad as it normally is. It just felt like the miles were ticking off, seeing everyone out there grinding and seeing so many people that I've run this race with and other races with, the communication, the encouragement, everything that was said out there, even if not by words, just by hand gestures and things like that. Not only will I say that the running community, as I always do, the running community is just such a huge family, but the Wildcat Ultra family is just extra special. It's to the point where if I know I will eventually get tired of running 100 milers, or maybe just not feel like running the race itself. But when the time comes, or if that time comes, I love the atmosphere and just the camaraderie and the family sense that goes on at this race, that I would even sign up just to volunteer. At this point, I just love being there, being around those people. The race director, Aaron, is just, that guy goes above and beyond for his runners. You can tell about a person by the people he's surrounded with, he or she's surrounded with, or what people do for them, and just the way his family and friends rally around him and support him and help him with this dream he had of having his own race and doing something for the running community, the ultra community. Just a great guy, and I hope this race can go on for a long time. I really do, and if there's any way that I can help support it and keep it going, I definitely will, because I've gained so many memories from participating in this event, met so many friends, people that I consider family at this point. Just a great event. And if you're ever looking for an ultra, I know it's brutal weather. For anyone outside of Florida, it's very flat. Yes, I still disagree with that. I definitely feel the elevation, especially the second to last climb that you have to make as you head towards the end of the loop. That one just sucks more and more each time I do it. But talking to other runners who come down from other states, they say it's definitely flat and fast, but the weather is just tough. So if you're coming from outside of Florida, just keep that in mind, that you have to compensate for the weather and the terrain. You have to balance those out, because it can be deceiving and catch up to you quickly. But just to get back to it, I can't really say anything really went bad, honestly, until day 2. Even going into the night, which was my biggest concern, just because I usually have, a hard time. Like, I'm tired and sleepy, but I can't sleep. Normally it's the aches and pains, or it's just being comfortable. This time, I tried some new things. I had an air mattress and I had a fan to make sure I could try to cool down faster and just be comfortable and not laying on a harder surface. I feel like that definitely helped. And also, as I mentioned earlier, the temperature definitely dropped. It got into the mid to low 70s. So there were points where I was waking up while trying to take my little power naps from being cold, not from any aches and pains. Like, I felt good physically, but then I would get cold and throw something on me to try to stay warm, just so I could get a good actual power nap. And what was funny was I'd get up and get back out there, and now that you're out in the exposed area, the exposed course, the breeze now felt cold, and the first mile, every time I finished a power nap and would get back out there, I would walk just to loosen up my legs, because I knew trying to run right out of that wasn't a good idea. And I was cold. Like, I was looking forward to running to build the body temperature back up, because it was cold. Other runners were saying the same thing. Like, if they took a break during the night and they went back out there, that first mile or so was cold, because that's the most exposed area of the course as well. Once you got into the trees, you started to warm up again, and then you finished the loop, and now you're like, oh God, it's hot again. So it was like, you're cold at the beginning of the loop, you're hot at the end, and now you're like, oh, if only I could feel that every time, like that hot, cold sensation. But, I powered through the night. I brought my headphones this time for the nighttime. I always bring them with me, but I never really use them, because I feel like music forces me in a way to focus on the distance, because a song will end and I know, okay, it's been 3 or 4 minutes. My watch hasn't gone off about a mile, or even if that hasn't, I know where I'm at on the course. It's been about 3 or 4 minutes. That's it. Where at least if I'm running without music, I don't have a sense of that time, and I'm out there grinding. I don't have that to add possible negative thoughts into my head. But going into the night, I knew I needed something to keep me up. Again, I was trying the stay awake pills. They weren't working. For the first time ever, I was drinking straight black coffee thinking that was going to help. It didn't. Eventually, I said screw the label and the instructions, and I took 2 of the stay awake pills, and that's when I finally felt like it was working. Like I was awake again. I was having energy, because everything that was supposed to give me energy and everything that gives other people energy just was not working for me, as it never does. I for whatever reason, I don't know, but it just doesn't work for me. So it was nice to be able to get some naps, some good 30 to 60 minute naps, get back out there, grind. So morning's coming. Now, actually, before I go to that part, during day 1, this is where I mentioned earlier that things just, you can train and practice all you want, but there comes a point where your body is going to react differently depending on the weather, food, whatever situations can be thrown out there. Again, this year I was set up next to Monique, and she was doing well. She was very consistent. Her injuries that she's been dealing with were not bothering her. She was really, in my opinion, on pace for a PR and, possibly another first place finish for the female category. And I forget what mile it was that she was at, but I come into camp real quick to just get some stuff before I head back out for the next loop, and she's on the floor, and everyone, my sister and her 2 crew members, they all looked concerned. Like, it didn't look pretty, and come to find out, she just was having stomach issues, was throwing up, and she didn't look well. So I said a couple things to her to try to encourage her, just reminding her of my first time doing a race and how I ended up disappearing for 8 hours and still finished with a good 6 hours left. So I did what I could to encourage her, went out on my next loop, and what I had realized was it wasn't just her at that point, because when I had started that loop, I was in like 28th place, and when I came back, I was now in 22nd, and I made a joke with the race director. I said, hey, either I got faster or some people got slower, because I just gained 6 spots on that loop. And he said, no, a lot of people just dropped. And I had heard somebody else saying they're dropping like flies. People are puking, they're feeling lightheaded. And I remember that next loop, I had gained another couple of spots. And on that loop, I noticed there were spots on the floor where you could tell people were just throwing up left and right. I mean, it was everywhere. You could even smell it in certain sections where there wasn't a breeze. And I kind of did like that self-evaluation, like how do you feel, how are you feeling when you eat, when you drink, energy wise, temperature wise, like but I felt great. Like for once I was feeling good, and I was just riding that high as long as I could while containing myself and staying within my means. Going into the night, I had done a couple loops and noticed I hadn't seen her, and again asked the race director about her, and he said she turned in her chip and decided she was going to go back to the hotel for a couple hours to try to recover and come back out and finish. And that's when I knew for sure, because of just her determination, her fight. I knew this is eating us all up, because seeing my friend Pam and seeing her eventually dropping and just not feeling good, throwing up as well. Lucian, who normally he doesn't sleep. Like he'll push himself all the way into day 2 before sleeping. I caught him sleeping early in the night. Just again, the sun was beating us all up. It was a confirmation that no matter how good you are, the weather affects us all, and some people can tolerate it a little bit more than others, but it still affects you, and it alters your plan, and you have to kind of work around that. So it was nice to see her back in the early morning. I think she came back around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, around that time. Seeing her in good spirits, feeling better, and moving well. I knew she was going to finish strong. My friend Nicole, who I really, just seeing her out there, we kind of had this running joke that the first year I was looping her a lot. And then last year, it was about half as many times that I ended up looping her, just because I was slowing down and pacing myself, but she had gotten faster and better. And I knew going into this race, she was way stronger than me. And I really think that if the weather wasn't what it was, that she was going to just totally crush this race and do so well, possibly a PR. But it even got the best of her. And I had only passed her once, but that was at the point where she was now, feeling it and really starting to lose the momentum that she had. It was a long time before I actually had passed her, and that was giving me encouragement. Like, she's doing really well. This is going great for her. So I was really bummed when I ran into her husband during the night, and we kind of talked a little bit, and he told me that, she had to drop, and even the other runner that was with them had been sleeping for a long time, so they doubted she was going to finish her race. He even said at this point he was looking at dropping down to the 100K distance just because he could grind, but he did it last year. He's done a lot of other things this year that it just wasn't worth it. And that's what I love, is that it's okay to have a DNF. It's okay to not finish a race. And I think sometimes it's tougher when you have done it, because you have a little less desire to push yourself, because I've done it, especially this race. I've done it, and I battled that a little bit into this race, knowing I've done this twice. I have both kinds of the belt buckle, so whatever one I choose now, I'll have 2 of, and 3 total. So there's nothing really new about this. I'm not going to PR. If I drop out or drop to the 100K distance, does it really matter? But just because I felt good for so long, I decided not to. But I kind of joked to myself at one point during the night when the thought started to linger. I thought, how would I title this podcast? Would I just title it DNF, did not finish, first DNF? Like, I started thinking of DNF related titles to call this podcast, because I started to think I might drop, not even necessarily because I need to, but just because I want to. And I didn't feel a desire to push, but I knew that was gonna go away. Just the way things were happening, I really felt like this was going to be a good, strong finish. So, going into the morning, seeing a lot of people now gone, mainly because a lot of them were doing the shorter distances, but also a lot of almost half of the 100-mile field had dropped. So there were a lot less people out there. And that's when it really gets tough, because you're interacting with people less. And now you're dealing with day 2 of the heat, which feels worse. Like, temperature-wise, it wasn't as bad as day 1, but just because how much day 1 beat you up, it made day 2 feel even worse. For the most part, people are slowing down. They're walking more. For me, I really have to admit that I felt good until mile 85. That's when finally my body just basically shut down on me. My body was done. It had enough. I knew I would have no problem walking the last 15 miles. And mentally, that was a little motivating and encouraging, because it wasn't going to be anything like previous races where I've had to walk as early as mile 50. Like, normally when I do one of these, I'm walking the last 30 to 45, 50 miles. Usually I beat myself up so early that I'm just forced to a walk at the end, where this time I paced myself and controlled myself so well that I went all the way up to 85 miles. And there's part of me now that looks back and says you probably could have pushed a little bit more and got a little bit more running in those last 15, but I just didn't feel like it. I felt like my walking pace was just a little slower than what my walk-run pace was. So I said, you know what, we're going to enjoy these last 15 miles, have some fun, encourage other runners, and just make the best of it and grind it out. And that's what I did. I did a little bit more talking than I did up to that point with the people that were out there, because again, you're not seeing people as much, and just you're seeing people suffer more. Nobody looks as good and happy as they did in day 1, where you don't feel like you need to say as much, where now it's, everyone is whether it's for themselves or for the other person, we're talking and encouraging each other as we pass each other, just to get that little bit of a boost and distract yourself from what's going on. And it was nice. I was able to push through. I mean, those last 15 miles, I definitely thought about quitting a lot. Each time that I would go in and stop for a little bit to cool down and soak my feet, or just soak my neck, my head, my body, and try to bring my body temperature down. Those were the hardest moments for me, just because mentally I was ready. I was done. But at that point, it's like, you got 15 miles to go. You can't quit now. If you didn't quit earlier, you can't quit now, especially knowing, you still got 9 or so hours left. If you really needed to, you could take another long break, whatever you need to do, even if it meant sitting in a car in some AC. But you're just telling yourself you have so much time left. But at the same time, you're saying, I just want to get this over with. I am so done with this. I'm not taking any breaks. I don't need to. I'm just ready. So that's what it was. It was just a walking mental battle. Push as hard as you could. Again, trying to conserve in the sun. And then when I got in the shade, pushing a little bit harder. Grind those last 15 miles. Get it done. And let's go celebrate. The crew, the aid station team, the Thompsons, all you guys, man, just the encouragement in the end and forcing me. They know I love these ice pops. They call them otter pops, so I don't know if that's what they're really called. I don't know, but they know, especially during this race, I want an otter pop. I want an ice pop. At times they were almost like, hey, you didn't take one. Take one. You have to take one. And I was like, no, I don't want to take it. You said you wanted one. So we had to work out a deal. I was like, all right, look, every other lap I'll take one. And at the end, they gave me a bunch as a celebration. But I went into that last loop knowing this is it. Just I actually, I had told myself, and I told somebody else, I said, I'm going to try to run this last loop or as much as I can. And just the thought of it, when I started that next loop, the thought of running almost like pissed me off. And I was like, yeah, we'll just keep walking. It doesn't matter. It's 2.5 more miles to go, whatever. So I pushed through and I finished. It ended up being not as good as last year, but better than the first year. So, that was a positive to take out of it. All things considered, I felt like I was able to really improve, again, learn some new things, take some new tips and tricks into the next one that I plan to do, and just remind myself to have fun. Like, the more I can keep this fun, the faster it goes, the more enjoyable it is, the less miserable I am. Just enjoy it. Be appreciative of this ability and opportunity, and not be so negative about it. Because, again, I'm the one who signed up for it. I paid for it. I'm putting myself through it. So there's no one else to blame but you. So you gotta enjoy it and make the best of it. And I feel like that's what I was able to do. This year it was fun. I did see one snake out on the course. It was actually as a lady was passing me, it kind of started to cross in front of me and behind her, and she noticed it. I didn't. So when she said it, I froze dead in my tracks. She actually seemed like she was comfortable and kind of got close to it and was trying to identify what kind it was. I wasn't taking that chance, but that, and then during the night, my headlamp did catch some eyeballs out in the woods, and when I was able to get my light on it, I could tell it was a deer out in the woods, so that was pretty cool. Body-wise, I felt good. Each time I did one of the 10-minute breaks, I would evaluate my feet. If there were any blisters, I was popping them, cleaning them, and then putting on some Band-Aids to reduce them getting any worse. And really, it wasn't until I had to start walking that I got more. I only had about 1 or 2 up until that point, and then I got another 2. So I'd say in the first 85 miles, I only had 2 blisters, but from 85 to 100, I got 2 more, maybe 3 more. But it's just, that walking and the extra time that my feet were spending on the ground and out there in that heat. Also a mixture of me sweating and soaking myself, things like that played a factor. But I rotated my shoes each time I did that, so I had 4 different shoes that I was rotating. Had a lot of socks that I was rotating, so I was always putting on a dry pair. Instead of I didn't have dry goods this time, so I was using baby powder, which actually ended up working pretty well. I still would rather have the dry goods just from my experience. I felt like, the baby powder didn't do as well of a job, but it did the job, so it definitely helped. As always, the aid station is stocked and well provided. I didn't consume as much as I normally do. Again, I didn't really feel like I needed to. I had my own stuff that I was using as well that I knew was going to sit well with my stomach, but I still enjoyed the pizza that they had, the bacon that they had, the ramen noodles that I had at night, the coffee, the ice pops, the ice that they give you definitely helped. My sister did get me Burger King, which definitely was a mental thing going into the walk fest at the end of the race. So having some French toast sticks and some hash browns and a big ice cold soda with some ice that I could also chew on was really helpful as I prepared for that walk. Never had to use my leg compression, which even my sister was shocked. She said at the end, she goes, I was surprised you didn't use it once. And again, I told her I didn't feel any swelling, any problems. I think the ice, the soaking my feet in ice water definitely helped and reduced the need for that. Putting my feet up every 10 miles, taking those little naps, I think those definitely played a part. Also not pounding and beating myself up as much in the beginning part of the race helped. It reduced that swelling and pain. and inflammation. The PR lotion definitely helped. I feel like my legs felt fresher as I used it. I foam rolled my back more. I didn't really need it for my legs, but I was using it for my back just to loosen up my back, because that gets tight, especially when I have to walk more. So it's just a constant learning experience. And as of right now, I was supposed to do the Miami 100 in 2 weeks, but because of the curfew still intact down here, the race was pushed to next year. But what the race director decided to do, so that we could still get something in, he created a 50 miler instead that can be done within the curfew time. So I've decided I will do that. I think if it was still a 100 miler, I might not have ended up doing it. Now that it's only a 50, I say only lightly, but now that it's only a 50, I'm a little more encouraged to do it. And one way that I've been preparing for that is taking more time off of running in between. So I haven't run it all yet. It's been a week since I finished. I've gone for one bike ride, and this morning I went rollerblading. So that's it. Just some leg type workouts, cardio, to keep my legs moving, keep my cardio up, but nothing really pounding wise. I plan on doing something this weekend coming up, just so I get a little running in before the race in 2 weeks. But otherwise, just taking that mental and physical break to prepare for that and be ready. So again, I just want to encourage everybody to take the time for yourself, for your mental health, any time you can take for your physical health, just to get out there and enjoy the outdoors and enjoy life and make the best of the situation. And until then, guys, thanks for the support, for the love. I appreciate everything. I'll see you guys for episode 9. Just remember to run the mile you're in, grind the lows, and ride those highs.
Thanks for listening to the Mile You're In podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check out previous episodes and more at heelstriker954.com.